Hey losers, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I am here with a video and I mean fucking business today because it's the end of October and I read 17 different things this month. It would take me so long to tell you about all these books in the fashion I usually do, which is rambly and with detail. So I'm gonna try to be really quick today because I don't want to edit a 40-minute video. I mean, a 40-minute video after edits, and also, like, I don't have time to do that today. I'm really squeaking things in here today. So, I'm just going to briefly tell you about everything, let you know what I felt about it, all that stuff. But first, quickly, my book stats. I read in total 17 books. 8 of these were off of my TBR, so I feel really great about that this month. I read 3,234 pages, which is about 104 pages a day. That would be about 190 pages per book, on average. I read 16 horror books and 1 nonfiction book. The years these were published: first one, 1990, 1992, 1996. Then we jumped to 2006. I read 4 books that were published in 2020. I read a 2021 book, a 2022 book, and 7 new releases. Starting with the actual books, this is Halloween Party by R.L. Stine. This came out in 1990, and this is simply a Fear Street book. This is about this group of teenagers, high schoolers, and there is a new girl at, I don't know, whatever, Shady Side High School, I think it is. Her name is Justine, and she's beautiful and mysterious, and she invites a couple people to a Halloween party, and just like the people she invites, it doesn't really make sense. They're like people from different social groups and like people she's never even really talked to that much, and they're like, well, why would I be here? And they find out. They sure do find out. This was okay. It was a Fear Street book, you know, it's a teen horror book. It was a easy, entertaining read. That's all I look for in those, you know what I mean? Then I also read This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. This came out in 2021. This has been on my radar for a long time and I picked it up. This was to me presented as a spooky technology book, and I'm not sure it was really that. It was partly that, but this isn't like all about the spooky technology. Anyways, this is following a man named Thiago. His wife has recently died. They're like young, and it was definitely like a tragic death, which I will let you find out on your own if you read this. Before her death though, they were having some weird things happening in the condo that they bought, and Thiago thinks that like this is all connected, and the story like really gets very strange. I did like this, but I am just like a tiny bit disappointed that it wasn't solely like a spooky technology book. And also there were parts of it where I was like, what's going on here? Like, I don't really understand this. Also, oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot, but there is a thing that happens to an animal in this that is very sad. And it was one of those things where sometimes when I'm reading a book, you can anticipate this violence happening, right? And this was not like that. So it's like, I can't even be like, I would have really liked to have skipped over it, and unfortunately it was like a jump scare almost, you know what I mean? So that was very sad. I don't know what to tell you about it. You have to figure out for yourself whether you're okay with that. I also finished 101 Horror Books to Read Before You're Murdered by Sadie Hartmann. This was a horror reference book, and this came out this year. This was really entertaining. One thing I will say is, as somebody who has been like pretty in tune with like horror books for years now, not to be braggy, but I mean just like there was only maybe like 4 books in here that I hadn't heard of before, which was slightly disappointing. And I get it, like Sadie's not writing this only for me or only for people like me who consume a lot of like horror related media, but it was a tiny bit like I was just maybe expecting to see more things I hadn't heard of, and I didn't. But I mean, that's okay. I still enjoyed it. I like Sadie's writing. I liked her little anecdotes about horror and her life. And I like the way that she breaks things down into different like atmospheres, themes, things like that. I find that very interesting, and my brain loves to categorize things, so like that was very appealing to me. Next we have Shooting Star by Joe R. Lansdale, which as far as I know was published this year. I don't know if this is like, this was published this year separately and like maybe it was in a collection somewhere before this. This is a very short book. Maybe like 60 pages or something like that. And I was really excited about this because it was supposed to have alien stuff in it. But I think all I'm gonna say is I would give back the time I spent reading this, and I would rather just go watch the 1978, I think it is, Invasion of the Body Snatchers with like Donald Sutherland and Jeff Goldblum and Leonard Nimoy. Okay, also a book I really didn't love, but this is The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. I believe this was a 2020 release. Yes. This is about a man from the UK living in Japan, working as a teacher. And one day he gets this video. It's like, it like strangely turns him on, even though I'm not really sure it's supposed to be like erotic in any way. Like the description of it didn't seem to be, but also I'm not this character. And it's this girl with the mask on, and she seems to know personal details of his. And along with these videos, eventually comes some threats. He's trying to figure out like who's sending him this and why. This takes place over a little bit of a longer period of time than you would think. It's not just like a week of this happening or a month. It's like a couple years, a couple months, like a year or two kind of a thing. And all I could say about this, how I feel about this, is it wasn't convincing to me. It didn't really make sense. At the end, you're like, I still don't get why this happened, and I didn't love it. It just wasn't, nothing about it, the thing happening, and also the reaction to it, it's just, it didn't convince me, you know what I mean? I'm looking at my stack here, and like, some of these I didn't love, which I read 17 books, so of course I'm not gonna love all of them. But this next one is a new release here. This is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. This was like a very creepy fantasy about a mermaid and a plague doctor who stumble across this village of children who are acting very strangely, and like eventually they go back. Well, they like meet them out in the woods, and then the children bring them back to see their, I think they called them their saints. I don't know. The children are strange, and you come to discover why, of course. And I don't know. This one, it's just, if your reading thing is language, and I do really appreciate that in a book, I think that just Cassandra Khaw's language is not my thing. Because there are authors who have floral language that I do really enjoy, or authors where they have a very clear voice in their writing that I really enjoy. And Cassandra Khaw, she has a very clear way of writing where it's like, I think I could probably pick her writing out of sample, like if I had samples, a blind sampling of reading. She has a very unique way of writing. I just don't think that it is for me. And I've read now 3 of her works, and it's like the ideas of them are really interesting, but I end up reading them and I don't love them. So, I don't know. It's just what it is, right? Then I read It's Me, Charlie by C.M. I still don't know how to say this author's name. C.M. Guidroz. I don't know. Guidroz. I don't know when this was published. 2023? Or that's just when this was printed, I think, actually. This is I mean, all of these are horror books, except for one, and you'll know which one it is. Anyway, this is like extreme horror, definitely. This is probably one of the like vilest books I've read, like one of the like stomach churningest books I've ever read. This was entertaining and super fucking gross. Like, it is extreme horror, it has extreme content in it. But one thing I will say is that this was very poorly edited. I mean, this was not edited. This can't have been edited because, and I don't want to personalize it, I guess, but like, as a reader, I read so many things, it's like you pick up on the way things should sound and the things that, the way things should be written, and I don't understand how the author themselves let this slide, because a lot of it isn't even like content or, you know, like grammatically this sentence sounds clunky. It's like punctuation errors over and over, like the same ones over and over and over again. So I don't really understand how that happened. And it was really distracting because it would just be like right away, it's like, oh, this is not how this should be written. You know what I mean? So like the story itself was entertaining enough. This is really short. This is less than 100 pages. And it was just fine. However, the editing kind of baffles me. Then also Goosebumps number 3. This is Monster Blood. This boils down to like, when you read it all, you're like, huh, this just is an accurate description of what it's like to own a cat. This is about a boy named Evan, and he is visiting his great aunt who is deaf. Oh my gosh, that reminds me, in Halloween Party, there are 2 deaf characters, and in this book, it's very strange because it's like R.L. Stine just really wanted to include a deaf character, and she could lip read perfectly. Like, nobody knew she was deaf, which is kind of strange representation of somebody who is deaf. In this one, the aunt is deaf and she does not lip read. She does not give a shit that she can't understand anybody else, apparently, which is also kind of strange. But maybe this is something R.L. Stine has experienced in his own life. Anyways, Evan has to stay with his great aunt Catherine over the summer, and he goes to this thrift store and finds this jar of like green muck, and it's monster blood, and strange things start happening when he messes around with it. All in all, classic Goosebumps book, just like short, sweet, and entertaining. Okay, then on to The Vessel by Adam Nevill. This was such a great book. Adam Nevill, he just really has an interesting way of writing. Another author who his writing voice is very clear. He freaks me out. His words are so creepy, and I enjoy reading his stuff a lot. So this is about a woman named Jess, and she is struggling with a like past that involves domestic violence, and now her ex is out of prison after serving time for assaulting her, and he's like kind of trying to weasel his way back in to her life. She has a young daughter, so this is like becoming very hard because the daughter does not understand all that happened between her mother and father, and he's very persistent. So Jess is like really having a hard time being a single mom, holding down a job, and trying to get to somewhere where maybe her ex-husband doesn't fucking know where she is constantly. He doesn't live down the street. So she takes this job as a caretaker for this elderly woman named Flo, and right away it's like things are strange there. Her house is very cluttered. It just doesn't seem like a really accessible house for somebody who is wheelchair bound like Flo. Flo does not speak a lot. She is very violent towards Jess. It's just a really strange situation. And then one night Jess has to bring her daughter with her for her overnight shift. And Flo all of a sudden like starts speaking up and just really takes to Jess's daughter, and this has some consequences. It was great, a great book. If you're looking for something with like A24 vibes, this is it. This is it. It's great. It's great. It was so good. Then on to the next book. This was published in 2023, in the US at least. This is 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Agustina Bazterrica. This I didn't love. It was a short story collection. And I was excited when I saw how many stories were in here and its length, because this means that the stories are short. However, reading it, it's like, these are too short. They're just like very little snippets of things. And really, I don't know if this should be considered horror. I think maybe it's not. Maybe it's not considered that, and I'm just assuming it is because this author also wrote Tender as the Flesh. But really, it's just like, sometimes the stories are a little bit strange, or like a little bit like, maybe a tiny bit like an episode of like The Twilight Zone, but, which I guess is horror, but I don't know. None of these, there was like, let me see, I usually highlight, and I feel like I was very, how am I trying to say it? I was very generous with my like, oh, these were my two favorites, because like, even those was just like, those are better than the other ones, you know what I mean? But one was about a woman who really just wants to be round. And one is about a man who thinks he might have met an alien. And those were my two favorite stories. I don't know. The rest, very forgettable. I didn't really like that at all. Next is The Rue by Alan Baxter. This I also didn't. I have some things to say about this. This was published in 2020, and I think, here's the thing, is people goaded Alan Baxter into writing this story about a killer kangaroo, and he ended up including all the names of those people in this book. So I think that this would have been like a nice gift for those people, but I don't think that this really should have been marketed maybe to a wider audience, because it feels almost like an inside joke and he is giving it to everyone to read. And it's like, the thing that threw me off the most is that there are these names of these people that like, I don't know personally, but like I know their names and their faces. And so like my brain's trying to like put them into this story in Australia, and it's like, this is not working for me. And also some of them just really felt crammed in there, you know what I mean? Like he's like, oh, I gotta add 2 more people to this bunch. So it just feels shoehorned, that part of it. And also like the story, it was just fine. I liked the killer kangaroo thing. Okay, also I'd like to talk about spoilers about this very briefly, so I'm going to put this down. When I hold it back up, you'll know I'm done in case you want to read this. But there is okay, so the whole thing in this story, it turns out that like there is this domestic violence situation, and the kangaroo has sprouted up because of that. And it's like, oh, this is really sad because this woman was abused by her spouse. And then it's like she ends up almost having to sacrifice herself in the end to like make the kangaroo go away. And it's just really fucked up, because it's like, especially because there's this afterword about how bad domestic violence is. And it's bad. And apparently it's a very serious thing in Australia specifically, the author is saying. So it's like, it was a really strange choice to be like, this woman suffered from domestic abuse and now also she has to fucking kill herself just because she wanted to get away from her fucking husband. And that, for some reason, did not sit very well with me. So, I didn't love The Rue. It was, I don't know. I wouldn't even say like it was okay. It's like, I don't know. I read it. I sure did. Okay, I have 3 more books left, and I think I'm doing really good on my time, honestly. Next on my list, this came out in 1998 or 1996. I don't know. 1998, 1996. This is Exquisite Corpse by Poppy C. Brite, who this is this author's dead name. He is now Billy Martin. He's transitioned. I don't know, would this be considered a dead name? Because it was a pen name to start with too. I don't know. I guess I don't know the nuances of that. So if you do, let me know. But this author is now Billy Martin. I don't think he has published anything under his name, Billy Martin. But this is Brite's work. And oh my god, this book was so fucking good. This book was intense, and another one that like, oh, like made my insides go, right. But it was like, this is the extreme stuff that I want to read, because I've been thinking about it, and like, it's like, I don't really love stuff that's like, ew, poo poo pee pee, gross, people eating gross shit. Like, okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's like watching the Saw movies, you know, or the Hostel movies, you know, it's for shock value, and some people really love that, and that's fine. This, however, in my opinion, this has transcended what I see as extreme horror. And maybe I'm gonna make some people upset when I say that, and that's okay, because I make people upset every day of my life, I'm sure. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to say that this is better than other extreme horror. This is just, when I talk about having a hard time reading extreme horror that I like this is what I'm looking for. Something that is beautiful and disgusting. I don't want something that's just disgusting, and that's just my personal thing about it. This is a different type of extreme horror, I guess I should say. This isn't necessarily like cut above the rest. This is what this is the extreme horror that I want. This is, I mean, I just keep saying that. This is about two monsters who meet under the most perfect circumstances. One is from the UK, and he is almost a Dennis Nielsen, Jeffrey Dahmer character, right? Where he kills to have a companion. He escapes from prison, which is, such a really interesting way that this happens. It's not just like he tunneled through the walls type of thing, which, good for you. If that's you, escapee character, but this guy is not that. And he just somehow happens to meet this other man who's been living in Louisiana, who is a different type of killer, and he really revels in the act itself. And together they target a young man named Tran. And so it's like this whole story, you know, is leading up to this, up to them in Tran. And that also like makes it so sad, because Tran is not just a faceless being in this book. He is a really well fleshed out character who we follow, and it's so sad following Tran, and then, you know, knowing that at some point these three all collide. And boy, so that like, it makes me so sad. It makes me want to cry a little bit. But it's like also beautiful, and it's like this anticipation of this event that you don't want to happen. And just all the characters in this book were so interesting and so full of depth and shit like that. And I just cannot wait to read more of Brite's work. Holy shit, like what a fucking author. Holy shit. Ugh, I think that's my favorite book this month. It was so fucking good. I'm getting weepy thinking about it. Okay, hold on. I should talk about this one next. Oh no, I'm not done, because I haven't even talked about the 3 books that I don't physically have. Fuck. Oh god. Okay, also I read All Hallows by Christopher Golden. This came out this year. This is about this neighborhood of people who are fairly close-knit, and there is a lot of neighborhood drama. Like that's the number one thing happening in this book, which was a little bit disappointing to me, because I went in here expecting a horror novel, not necessarily something like The Whispers by Ashley Audrain or Good Neighbors by Sarah Langan, which are books that I like that are neighborhood drama. But this one, it was like, I wish he would have picked one thing, right? Because there's this neighborhood drama going on, and then there's like 3 different villains in this book, and it felt like none of them really got fleshed out well enough. But the plot in here, this neighborhood on Halloween night, and the kids are like doing their own thing. Like we're following a lot of different people also, which it was a little bit hard to keep track of who was who. And they're each having experiences with these children in vintage Halloween costumes who are actually acting kind of strangely, and they're worried about this man called the Cunning Man who's gonna come take them and stuff like that. And it just goes from there, right? But there is a lot of neighborhood drama shit. I read Christopher Golden's books. I've read 4 of them now. And I feel really similarly about all of them, which is like, I like this idea. This idea is very interesting. However, when it gets down to it, it's like, this just didn't really hit it for me. Like, it was an okay book, I read it, but I was really expecting something more and I didn't get it. Wham. Okay, so then there were 3 books. Well, one book I read on the Kindle, which was Snatcher by Grady Hendrrix. This was so short. It was 28 pages. This is part of like a collection that Amazon put out. I don't know, fuck Amazon. Like I'm glad that those authors got money, but like it kind of sucks that it's all exclusive and shit. But let's see. Snatcher is about a man with a terrible past where his father killed his mother, but his father like denies it. He says there was a fucking monster under his bed. So this man is like lived with this thing his whole life. Like this didn't happen, right? This is wild, right? And then he finds out that maybe it was true. And it really, oh God, it's just like this thing that like ends in a place where it's like, but we could have more of this, right? And I don't think we ever will. And that's okay. Like it was really good, but it like leaves it in a place where it's like, you know, when a movie is like trying to start its own like cinematic universe. Like, I don't know if any of you watched The Pope's Exorcist, which honestly I did not. I thought it was very boring. And that's okay if you liked it, but it like, at the end of it, you're like, oh, they're trying to make sequels, like plural with this shit. It's like, it's almost like that. Although I don't think that's Grady's intention, but I thought it was really fun, especially for such a short little thing. Okay, also I listened to Fever House by Keith Rosson. This was a book that came out this year. This was a big fucking book and a long audiobook, and it was great. It was narrated by Exquisite, who's one of my very favorite audiobook narrators. She's so, I just love her voice. She's got like a really rich voice, and she just, oh, I love her voice so much. And this is, oh, such a big story too. And it's the first one in a series, and it's like a book where I read it and I'm like, oh God, I hope there's a sequel. And like there is. So, I mean, not yet, but there will be. So this is, how do I even explain this? This is a story about a relic. It's this hand. A lot of people are involved for different reasons. Like one guy just kind of happens to be there, right? And some other people are like hired to find this thing specifically. By this guy who likes to collect weird shit. And this hand, it's like things go really bad around people who have this hand, right? It's like the hand causes these bad things to happen almost. And it's a really big, interesting story, and I liked it a lot. Like, I'm gonna have to buy a copy of this book. The cover is great, the story is great, but the audiobook, like, super great. And then, okay, the other audiobook I listened to was Ben Heavens by Daniel Kraus. I loved this. I think that this is supposed to be YA, but it's like really intense. Like I think like definitely older teen kind of a book, because it gets into some stuff that's like just kind of like psychologically troubling. This is about a teenage girl. I can't remember her name. I don't have time to look it up. Her dad has died in the past couple years. And before he died, he thought he had been abducted by aliens. And in the years leading up, like in between the abduction and in between his death, She thinks his death because he kind of just disappeared, but it's assumed that he's dead. Everyone just thinks that he's dead. He was creating these strange traps and things like that to catch aliens around their property. And she's kind of kept up with those with her best friend. And she's really kind of doing it for her best friend who I think saw her dad kind of as a father figure. It's just like a really sad story about like grief, and it's got some like psychological shit in it. I mean, it's an alien book. It's an alien book. So infer what you will from that. But it was really good. I really liked it. But there are, I can't say it because it's spoilers, but there is psychologically troubling things that happen in this book. I really, really did like it though. I really liked it. Another one I'm gonna have to buy a copy of because it was just really good. And like a book where it's like, oh, this is aliens, right? And it actually was. I didn't mean to hit that book so hard. Okay, and final book. Final book on my list is The Family That Couldn't Sleep by D.T. Max. This is a nonfiction. And I bought this because I heard about this family in Italy who for hundreds of years, once certain people in this family reach a certain age, middle age, around 50 years old, some of these family members have gotten this thing they call fatal familial insomnia. So this is something that's passed down in this family. It doesn't happen right away in life or even very soon in life. Like I said, these people are, you know, in their 40s, 50s, 60s when this strikes. And eventually what happens is they just suddenly cannot sleep. And they just can't sleep until they die. Like, because sleep is such an important part of your body and like the way you stay alive. And it's really kind of like a real life terrifying thing, which is why I picked this up. But it's like, it's caused by the way your body makes like the proteins in its cells and stuff like that. This disease is related to like mad cow disease, and a couple other like zoonotic illnesses. But my thing is that this is called The Family That Couldn't Sleep. And I thought this would be the main focus of this. However, it is really the main focus of diseases related to this protein thing that happens. They're called prions, shit like that. I don't know. Okay, my thing is this was very, very, very science heavy. And I am not a scientist. And it's like, if this author was writing this for a general audience, I think he should have dumbed it down a little bit, because this is not, I'm not in a scientific journal, right? I'm not reading something from a scientific journal because I'm not a fucking scientist. So some of this went over my head for sure. I thought it was interesting enough to finish, but like I said, very science heavy. That's what I read in October. Oh my God. I'd love to know what you thought of these, if you've read any of them. I'd love to know what your favorite things you read this month was. I'd love to know if you have any recommendations on where to go with Poppy Z. Brite's work. Like, what do I read next? I'm so in love with that author. Holy shit. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Check out my link tree with all my links to all the things. That's it. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.